Jersey overtime, which is 10 minutes late because I didn't hit the go live button. But more importantly than that, I'm John Fischer, and I'm here to talk to you, the people who matter, the New Jersey Devil fans. And I thank you, my sunshine, and all the hockey fans around the world who are watching this stream either live or after the fact. I'm John Fischer, longtime writer, blogger, opinionated man, season ticket holder. I'm running out of titles here relevant to this, but I'm here to talk to you about the New Jersey Devils. Now, we're in the doldrums of the offseason. So what that means is that there's not going to be a lot of activity in the NHL. The most exciting thing involving the New Jersey Devils is that Jesper Bratt got married, and the big deal and his brother Luke Hughes appeared at a Morgan Wallen concert. That's where we're at with hockey with respect to the New Jersey Devils. However, if you are a prospect head, if you're interested in following the future of hockey, if you're interested in international hockey at the youth level, you are excited because the Lincoln Gretzky tournament is right around the corner, if it's not already starting today, and the World Junior Summer Showcase has started today. So national teams are already starting to prepare for those big tournaments later in the winter, around Christmas time for the World Juniors. And the Lincoln Gretzky tournament kicks off the prospect season for pretty much everybody. It's an opportunity to see the upcoming 2027 and 2028, maybe a handful of 28s, that draft class ahead of time. So if you're into prospects, great. And in that vein, and because nothing else is happening with the Devils, let's talk about prospects in the New Jersey Devils. So we're going to talk about the 2026 draft class that the Devils took about a month ago. In fact, to this day, the first round happened. And so we can already see that with Sonny Mehta, Brandon Birch, new organizational management coming in, there's already a shift in how the Devils are drafting. And that's it. And I'm going to explain why that's a good thing or not such a good thing. But you do have to keep it, you have to take some perspective with this, because in hockey, in the NHL, you're drafting 18-year-old kids for the most part. Maybe 19-year-olds in some cases. You're not going to know if a player is really good for another 3, 4, 5, 6, or even 7 years. One thing I used to do when I was a writer was every 5 years, I would look back at how the Devils did 5 years ago at the draft and see how it's going. And while there may be some outstanding questions, there may still be some prospective hopes, so to speak, you get a sense of whether or not the draft class went well or not. So for this stream, I'm going to go over and give you my thoughts about how the Devils did a month ago, and then we're going to look back at how they did 5 years ago. And you can get a sense of how things happened 5 years ago impacts the New Jersey Devils of today. We're also going to have a fun sidebar question related to that look back, which is asking and answering the question, is Luke Hughes good? I will spoil this for you. Yes. Yes, he is. Is he $9 million good? That's a bit of a different question, but let's get there when we get there. So let's make sure I got the right screen up. Here we go. So before we get started, here's the personnel for the New Jersey Devils with respect to drafting. So I pulled this from the Devils official website, so I'm hoping that this did not suddenly change in the last few weeks. For the most part, Sonny Mehta, he's the general manager. He was the big change between this and last year. Most of the scouts and most of the managerial positions for amateur scouting and development have largely stayed the same. Now, contracts may be ending soon. There may be some new names coming in, but Mark Dennehy is still, leading the way. Paul Castron, Scott LaChance, they're still at director level. Dakota Keene, manager of amateur scouting. I'm not sure if this is a new position or not, but Dakota's at the table. And then the amateur scout list, a lot of these guys have been around in the organization for quite some time. Greg Royce has been transitioning both between North America and Europe. Just as a general comment, scouting is different for North America and Europe because you are dealing with different leagues and different situations. In Europe, it's a lot of professional hockey with youth teams where guys are being called up to the senior level, so to speak. And when they do, they're playing against men. They're playing in games that matter. They're playing at their country's highest level, and it's not the easiest for a prospect. So you do have to pay more attention to how they approach things, how many minutes they're getting, how their coaches regard them. In North America, it's mostly junior hockey and now college hockey thanks to NIL. So you're more interested is this prospect making a difference? Is he playing prime minutes? Is he taking care of business on the ice? So these names here, and I'll just quickly read them because I know I made them a little small. Again, Greg Royce is jumping back between both. North America, you got Patrick Charbonneau, Joe Ferris, Mike Rooney, Michael Sdow, Steve Smith, and Mike Yandel. On the European side, led by Tommy Westland. He's listed as a head European scout, so I presume he's coordinating a lot of this with the manager and the directors. But Tommy Westland leads a group with Misha Manchik, Sergei Nemchinov, who I believe is that Sergei Nemchinov, former New Jersey Devil and former player of our hated rivals, Tom Sinsalo, Vaclav Slansky Jr., and goaltending scout Anders Nilsson. And as you'll see with the 2021 look back, the European scouts, their work has been used quite a bit. We'll get there later on in the stream. So the 2026 NHL Draft happened a month ago. The first round happened on the 26th in June. The 27th was everything else, rounds 2 through 7. The Devils made 2 significant trades before the draft. The big one is trading Simo Nemec to Calgary. That's Nemec and Siplikov for our hated rival second rounder in this year's draft. That's 35th overall. Las Vegas's first rounder in 2027 and Colorado's first rounder in 2028. My understanding is that those first rounders are top 10 protected or lottery protected. So if Las Vegas and Colorado completely falls apart in those years, the Devils, may not fully benefit. But they've still got extra first rounders. They also got Etienne Morin, a defenseman who's primarily going to probably play in Utica. So clearly Meta and his staff didn't think that much of Nemec to give him the big contract that Calgary gave him. And in a recent interview that Meta had with Anthony Corona of NJ.com, he said that the package was just too good to pass up for Nemec. If this is it, then it's likely that whatever big trade that some fans were hoping for to flip Nemec for maybe a top 6 forward, a different defensive prospect, some other package, that wasn't on the cards. The best deal apparently available to, at least in Sonny's estimation, was 3 draft picks, albeit 3 higher draft picks, but 3 draft picks and Morin. So the Devils didn't have to pay Nemec. Best of luck to him at Calgary. Hopefully the Flames coaching staff understands how to best harness his talents and teaching him how to get back on defense and not to pinch so much and not to be so aggressive in the neutral zone. There's a lot that Calgary coaches have to work with, but if they can work with him, I think they'll be happy. The other pre-draft move of importance is taking their 4th rounder of this year to Detroit for Amadeus Lombardi. Now, Lombardi hasn't broken through to the NHL. However, he has been a scoring machine, close to point per game, if not more than that, at the AHL level. It's for him, for one reason or another, he hasn't been able to crack the lineup in Detroit. So this is very much flipping a 4th rounder to get a guy who, at a minimum, will make Utica much better. Meta did say in his interview with Corona recently that he wants a better Utica team, a more competitive Utica team. I'm agnostic about that. There have been, the Devils have had some pretty crummy AHL teams, but they're still developing their players because they're still getting prime minutes and still developing the talents that they want to see for the NHL. At the same time, I can also look at organizations like Tampa Bay, where they call it Tampa Cutes for a reason. They just unearth guys that nobody knows where they came from, and it turns out they played a lot in Syracuse. They learned the right things at Syracuse. They had the right culture, the right mindset, and therefore they're able to come in, plug and play, and help that Tampa Bay team continue to be competitive as things are. So hopefully it works out. If not, at least Utica will get better for the 4th rounder. So those are the pre-draft moves the Devils made. At the draft, they traded down twice to get some extra picks. Generally a good idea considering that you're drafting 18-year-olds for the most part and you're hoping that they hit the mark. So they traded that 35th overall pick they got from the Nemec and Siplikov trade to Chicago to trade down 2 spots in the 2nd round and pick up an extra 4th rounder at 119th. And then they flipped a 5th rounder to Colorado to moving down 9 spots and an extra 7th round pick, or getting a 7th round pick at all. They didn't have one going into this year. So the Devils picked up some extra picks to have a more complete draft. And the first one that they took was Alexander Command, or Alexander Command, or Mr. Command, or Alco. I don't know what the proper nickname's going to be. But he went at 12th overall. Very young for the draft class, born just a couple weeks before the draft actually happened, 18 years ago. Stands at a solid 6'1", 187 pounds, left-handed shot. Played at Örebro in Sweden, primarily with their under-20 team, which is their, quote-unquote, their junior team. Highest youth team outside of the SHL. He did get some SHL games, but like most 18-year-olds, very minimal action. But at the under 20 level, the guy was a scorer. The guy was making things happen. Yes, 17 goals and 27 assists, one of the higher scoring rates in that level of Sweden. Not a joke. A lot of great prospects come out of Sweden. The thing about points in general I do want to point out is that they're not necessarily just indicators that the guys have an awesome offensive game, but that a lot of the things they're doing on the ice is helping the team succeed. So it's not just that points are everything, but points are a good representation that the things they're doing on the ice are yielding some actual value on the scoreboard, which ultimately matters. That continued into the playoffs, where he was nearly a point per game in the under 20 playoffs for Örebro. And the production continued at the international level. At the World Under 18 tournament, 7 games, 7 points. You combine that with other international play, like 4 nations, 5 nations, 21 points over 21 games. So Command was in command on the ice and on the score sheet at the under 20 level and at the under 18 level. The big thing about him that many people talk to first is his compete level, his intensity, how hard he goes at it. Generally, when you lead off with that for a prospect, that's not great because it's kind of a nice way of saying he doesn't have a lot of other skills. But that's not the case for Command, because he does have other skills. He's got a strong two-way game. He has a decent shot. He moves fairly well. He's got good vision. He does a lot of things pretty well. And as it turns out, thanks to guys like JP Campatesi, his transitional game has been effective. And that may have been a big reason why he went at 12th overall. Not just because he was a center, and not just because Tynan Lawrence was drafted 1 pick before him, and that would have been the ideal pick, in my opinion, for the New Jersey Devils organization. But you got out there and got a guy who works his tail off, hates to lose, and does a lot of things right and a lot of things well on the ice. Meta, in that interview with Corona, he said he could be a mix of Sam Bennett and Anton Lundell. And if that's the case, fantastic, because Florida loves Anton Lundell, wouldn't move him for the world. And Sam Bennett, he's a great player in his own right. So that's your upside. That being said, the concern is, how high is the ceiling for him? Is he going to get to that level of Anton Lundell and Sam Bennett? Is he really just going to be a third-line center or a bottom-6 center at the NHL level? And while you could argue that getting any NHL player out of the draft is a good thing because these guys are 18 and you don't know what they're going to be, if you're selecting in the lottery, you want to aim a little higher than just be a third-line center. As a mitigation point, this is a third-line center spot behind Jack Hughes and Nico Hischier. So that's perfectly fine. For the New Jersey Devils, that could work out well, but there's always going to be that question of, could you aim higher? And those guys who are selected after him, like Nikita Klepov, like Oscar Hemming, like Oliver Suvanto, you question if those guys bust out and break out and become big deals in a few years, the question is going to be, why didn't you pick them over Command? And of course, the other concern is he needs time to get to speed. He's not slow by any means, but he does need some explosivity in his skating. He needs to have a little more burst, because at that level, at the next level, he's going to need to move a little quicker, which is fine. He's going to get those opportunities to learn exactly that at the SHL level. The other concern, and it's not so much a concern, but more of a reality, and you see at this bottom point here, is that his contract with Örebro ends at 27-28. So unless there's a clause to get out of it or they renegotiate the deal, which I'm not sure is even a possibility in the SHL, the Devils are going to have to wait for him. They're not going to be able to bring him over quite that fast. So there's going to be some time to wait. That's in a sense good because he'll get the opportunity to develop. But if it turns out he's getting too good for the SHL and you want to bring him over faster, you're going to have to wait 2 seasons, it looks like, which fine. So that's your 12th overall pick. I will say I like the pick. And if you're going to pick a center after Lawrence being taken, Wyatt Cullen was the other guy. He's not a center, but it would have been a fantastic pick for the Devils. He went 2 picks before the Devils. So Command, it could be argued, and I can agree that he was the best of the rest. That being said, I really hope he hits a lot higher than just third line center. And you know, I can understand the disappointment with some fans who are hoping that 12th overall pick would have been sent to someone else for a player that could help the New Jersey Devils today. Because, as I mentioned in the last stream, and I'm going to keep repeating this point, Sonny Mehta does not have a mulligan of a season. You got to get winning. You got to get competitive to keep Jack Hughes happy, to help Nico Hischier feel happy with his recent extension, and to keep Brett happy. Keep everyone happy by winning. So, moving on. At 37th overall, again, Devils traded down for this guy. They took winger Matthias Van Hanen, born on September 11th, 2007, which means, that's right, he's an overage draft pick, albeit just by like 4 days. He barely missed the cut, or he barely made the cut last year, didn't get selected, went from HIFK to Everett in the WHL, and bossed that league. I mean, coming into the league, the man averaged an assist per game. No, he averaged more than assists per game. The guy was dishing out dimes, making things happen for the Silvertips, continued to make things happen in the playoffs, and this continued with the Finnish under-20s. He appeared at the World Junior Championships and put up 6 assists in 7 games. No goals, just assists, but still, assists means somebody scoring, which is great. In 8 other games with the under-20 team in Finland, he put up another 8 points. So the guy was incredibly productive at his age level. And as you can guess, his big asset is that he can pass the puck. He's got vision. He's quick. He can read things in transition. He can read things on the rush and make it happen. And it's great. Similar to Command, the transitional stats on him are apparently really, really good. And it's clear that from this pick and the Command pick, that's something that Meta and his staff are starting to favor. The concerns with him, well, again, Van Hanen is 19. Or he's about to turn 19, I should say. So what that means is that he's got one fewer season of development, meaning, yes, he's one step closer to being professional. He's one step closer to moving up to a next level. But it also means whatever you need to have him work on, well, he's a little closer to a finished product just by the fact that he's a little older. He's barely an overager. Other concerns, as you can see with the 176-pound listing, the guy needs mass. Most players at age 18 need it. Most players at age 19 need it. Get in the gym. I'm sure he'll be fine. The shooting is also a bit of a question. He definitely deferred a lot. So the next question is going to be, being a good playmaker isn't just passing the puck well and looking for options. It's also knowing that the right play is to take a shot yourself. So it's important that he makes sure that his shot is good. And that's something I'm sure that's going to be spoken to about. And similar to Command, the first step, his speed off the first step could be a little faster. He's certainly not slow. He can be very agile. He can move in different directions very quickly, which is very valuable. But that first step to break away, that first step to get ahead of the defense or ahead of your own team to stretch the ice, that could be improved upon. Van Hanen is already going to go to the next level in the sense of he's going to college. He's going to go to Boston College. He's going to be an Eagle for next season. Hopefully it goes well for him. I'm sure the Devils are going to take a very close look to see how he does in college, and we'll see how quick they leave him there. But again, this pick was a surprise. Normally you don't take overagers this early in the draft. You usually look to take them later, more on flyers, because again, most of the league knows who this guy was at age 18 and said, no, we don't really want to take the chance on him. So clearly the Devils liked what they saw out of him last season, and I'm sure there was a lot of rumblings about where he was going to go this season in this year's draft. It would have been easy, and in my opinion, maybe more preferable to take a chance on Victor Plant of the National Developmental Team Program. Matthias Preston would have been a fantastic pick if you were looking for a winger. If you wanted some beef, Casey Mutrin was taken right after this guy. You know, similar to Command, I don't hate the pick. I like a lot of what I'm seeing here, but there's going to be that open question of what about the guys taken after him? Now, with fewer questions is going to be the other second rounder that they took, Nikita Sherbakov. I probably butchered the name. Apologies for that. Left-handed defenseman, left-sided defenseman, one of the older players in the draft class since he was born on October 23rd, 2007. He's a big boy, 6'5" already, 187 pounds, and unlike the other Russian the Devils drafted, he's legitimately 6'5". He comes out of the UFA system. Now, the way it works in Russian hockey and similar to other European teams, your contract at the youth level allows you to play up with the men. However, you typically do not play a lot. And you can see that this was the case for this defenseman. He did get 7 appearances at the KHL with the main team, but he only played less than 6 minutes per game. Not very much. More impressively, though, he played at the VHL level more than the MHL level. The VHL is analogous to the AHL. So it's basically the minor leagues, the second tier of Russian hockey. 35 games, put up a couple points, and he played 15 minutes a night on average. That's decent work for an 18-year-old. And especially in Russia, young guys typically do not get the minutes unless they're very, very good. So the fact that he went to a men's league and played a regular style of minutes for a defenseman, that's a really good mark. And at the junior level, while he wasn't super productive, only 10 assists, he dominant, he played dominant minutes. He played nearly 19 minutes a night for 15 games at the junior level, which is the NHL. So definitely a mix of competition. Coaches definitely wanted to see a different style, see how he did in different environments, different styles, so to speak. And this helped him get drafted, I think, because it really was a mark of how successful he was on the ice. So his big pros, similar to Command and Van Hanen, very mobile. He can move in all four directions really well. The first step could be a little bit better, but again, skating, moving himself around is fairly smooth. And for 6'5" and nearly 190 pounds, that's a really good thing. His defensive coverage was also seen as a pro. The guy is a very good defenseman. The word on him is that if he's going to make it at the next level, at the NHL level, it's going to be as a defensive defenseman. And I can see it. It's a little disappointing because typically you see the defensive defensemen at the NHL level, they were scorers at younger levels or at different levels, but he seems to get the defensive side of the game down really well, and that's going to help him in the future. And that leads me to the concern. Does he have an offensive game? This is not the 2000s where you can just be a defense-only player. Even the quote-unquote defense-only players in the NHL these days, they're still able to pass the puck well. They're still able to start a breakout. They're still able to handle a puck at the point. They're still able to understand where they need to be supportive without the puck on offense. It's a two-way game more than ever before. So the big question is going to be, can Sherbakov understand that? And the other concern is, again, upside. The safe mark seems to be if he's going to make it, could he just be a third pairing defensive stopper? Cool, great. But could he be more than that? Could he be a second pairing guy? That remains to be seen. And a lot of that's going to come down to how he's actually developed at UFA. Now, he's only got one more season with that contract. So he may get a repeat again of playing primarily in the VHL, which isn't a bad thing for a 19-year-old defenseman. Maybe he gets a couple more KHL appearances and maybe gets 10 minutes per game. Maybe, hopefully. It remains to be seen what the Devils are going to do with him once that contract ends. Personally, get him out of the KHL, and if you can get him into the AHL sooner rather than later, I think that would be great. But next season's going to really dictate whether that's a great idea or not. Now, the Devils took a break and came back at 119th overall to take Lover Gashalov. Oh boy, this guy is a boom or bust prospect. He also had a bit of controversy. Apparently, he was listed at 6'3" by his team. He's truly 5'11". Being off by 4 inches is quite a significant difference. I'm not a big believer that size matters a whole lot in hockey, but being off by 4 inches does matter. One of the older prospects in the draft class, played for AFTO Yekaterinburg, and he primarily played at the junior level. Only got a couple tastes of the KHL and the VHL playing with men, but he dominated at the junior level. He was the 5th scorer in the entire league. Point per game, more than a point per game, more than an assist per game. And at the playoffs, he continued to produce. And he played roughly 20 minutes a night in the MHL. So clearly, he bossed that league. He was one of their top scorers. Okay, so here comes the problems. When he has the puck, great stuff can happen. He has a great shot. He's got great passes. He has great vision. When you give him the puck, he can do some fantastic things, apparently. When he doesn't have the puck, it's a bit of an issue. The work ethic isn't always there. Defensive coverage and back checking, not consistent. And if he's not dictating the offense, he could just kind of just float there a little bit. Now, to be fair, this is the MHL. And one of the concerns about Russian junior hockey is that depending on what conference you're in, what team you're in, what your situation is, the intensity level just isn't there. It's not the same as Canadian Major Junior Hockey or even the USHL. So some of this could be chalked to the fact that Gashalov knew he was better than most of the people on the ice, and therefore he already figured, what more do you want me to do? I'm better than everyone else. I'll just take things as they come. And that may be fine at AVTO's MHL team. But if you're going to move up to the pro level, you're going to move up to play with men, he's going to have to back check. He's going to have to learn how to play well without the puck. He's going to have to understand he's not going to run things. So there's a lot of potential. Again, he's a boom or bust prospect. If he hits, it's going to hit big and it's going to help the offense in the future. But he's got a lot to learn without the puck. He just does. Similar to Sherbakov, his contract is going to end next season per EP. So Again, we'll see if the Devils want to bring him over. It may not, similar to Gritsuk, it may not be the worst thing if he stays in Russia a little longer. But again, how he does next season is going to play into that. Hopefully for his sake, he gets more games with men. Because I honestly get the sense that he's too good for the MHL. He needs a challenge. If you want him to learn those other things like defense and playing well without the puck, he's going to have to get away from playing in playing in Russian junior hockey. Now, the Devils went to Belarus for a goaltender. They continue the trend, the streak of goaltenders being picked at the NHL Draft, and they picked Daniil Ruskovich. Now, Mark Dennehy, he got in front of the camera, and one of the things he said was that when this guy was available, he was too good to pass up. He was the 21st goaltender drafted in 2026, so I don't fully get that. Born on April 17th, he's a big boy, 6'4", already close to 190 pounds, left glove. He played for Dynamo Shinnik Babruysk in the MHL. Now, Belarus does have teams in the KHL, so this is effectively Russian hockey. He was not their number one goaltender. He was their number two in a three-team setup with Evgeny Prokhorov and Anton Krubovits. Played 20 games, 91.3 save percentage does look good until I tell you that's 56th in the MHL. So good, but not exceptional at that level. He did get 2 shutouts. He got a couple games with the under-18 team for Belarus. They didn't play too many teams. They only played Russia, honestly, thanks to the IHF ban on Belarus. Only 2 games, got killed in both. The thing about Ruskovich is that he's definitely big. He definitely moves well. He's very athletic. So I'm sure the goaltending scout, Ender Nilsson, probably saw this and went, great, we have a lot to work with. I want this guy in the organization. And that's my hope, that that's what the scouting team was thinking, because the numbers aren't amazing. And outside of the fact that he's big and move well, there's a lot of other things he's got to work on. He's got to work on tracking the pucks. He's got to work on positioning. He's got to work on, recovering for saves. He's got to understand. He honestly needs a place where he can play more than 20 games in a season. I understand the MHL, they play shorter seasons, but if you're a goaltender, you need to be playing a lot to get that development, to get that experience that you need to hone your skills. He's going to be with his current club for another 2 seasons. That's according to his contracted EP. It remains to be seen if that's going to be Dynamo Shinnik for another year. I don't know if what their affiliate is in the VHL or the KHL. Again, he's a goaltender. I'm okay with letting him stay in Europe for a while and letting him cook, so to speak. As long as he's getting minutes, he's got to get minutes somewhere, got to get games. So with that being said, the Devils decided to they went back to major junior hockey, but they picked a pair of Americans to round up their draft class. Luke Wilfley, listed as a center, very young, born on June 30th, so he turned 18 after the draft. 6'1", 180 pounds, right-handed shot. He played for the Portland Winterhawks and only put up 15 points in 66 games. Portland did make the playoffs, didn't do well in the playoffs. He contributed nothing on the score sheet in the playoffs. Why was he picked is a big question, because typically if you only put up 15 points in your first full season of major junior hockey, that doesn't bode well unless you're a defenseman. But the big thing about Wilfley is that he's a pain. He's a pest. He's a royal pain. You want a guy who's nasty. You want a guy with grit. You want a guy who's just going to antagonize people. Apparently that's Wilfley's calling card. He did a lot of antagonizing with the Portland Winterhawks. That being said, this does not suggest a lot of offense or a lot of tools. If he has offensive skills, and maybe he does, he's got to show it real soon. He's got to grow real fast with the Portland Winterhawks. He's one of those guys that I think I'm a little surprised the Devils drafted him at all. Maybe he's got some transitional or underlying numbers that were much better than what 15 points in 66 games seems to suggest. There is a sense that you just let him cook and let him develop for a long time. He's an Arizona State commitment for 27-28, so more likely than not, he goes back to Portland, and if he wants to make it as a pro hockey player, the hope's got to be he's got to be one of their better players. He's got to do a lot more than 15 points in 66 games. He's got to really blossom at the WHL level, and then college is going to be another challenge just to get up there. But at least he can bother a lot of people. That much he's got nailed down perfectly. And their last draft pick, the last pick of the 2026 draft class, the Devils took a flyer that I'm a little more happy that they took than Wilfley, in Quinn McKenzie, born on November 27th, standing generously possibly at 5'9" and 176 pounds. This right-handed center was a productive player for the Sioux Greyhounds. So unlike Wilfley, this guy put up 51 points in 65 games, put up 7 points in the playoffs. The guy was a producer. The guy produced on an OHL team right away. And apparently from Brock Otten, OHL prospect guru, ohlprospects.blogspot.com. Go to him for any OHL analysis. He put him 50th on his list of top 50 prospects, noting that the size is a concern, the overall speed is a concern. There's a legitimate question of what's he going to be beyond being a good college scorer. And I get that. The pros there are exciting. He is quick. He is very fearless. He goes to the net despite his size. He may lose a lot of puck battles, but he will battle. He will produce. But of course, that size is going to be a question mark for the next level. His defensive game is definitely going to be a question mark for the next level. His overall speed, apparently similar to Command, similar to Van Hanen, similar to Sherbakov. He moves well, but getting up to speed, get that explosiveness in his skating could be better. And if you're at 5'9", a generous 5'9", the expectation is you got to be skating pretty fast the moment you get the opportunity to do so. And of course, while he showed good offense at the OHL level, is that going to translate up to a higher level? Again, Brock Otten seems to think that he could be a scorer at the college level, but if you're going to make it to the NHL, it's got to be more than that. And we're going to see what that looks like. So similar to Wolfley, he's going to go back to junior hockey. My understanding is that that's going to be his 26-27 game plan. He's committed to Penn State for 2 years from now. And that's going to be really where the Devils and others are going to get to see whether or not he's got a future in the pro game. So this is the draft class. Very European heavy. They didn't select a single Canadian. Generally, ethnic and national backgrounds don't matter that much to me. Shouldn't matter too much to many people. But it is notable that in a sport like this, the Devils just didn't pick any this year. They also only picked one defenseman, which is also a bit unusual. They still picked a goalie, but this was forward, one defenseman, one goalie. Not in that order. The European scouts, they definitely had their homework done, and Sonny Mehta and his team looked at that work and said, great, this is what I value. I want underlying numbers. I want compete. I want transition. I want something to back up that these guys can possibly do something more than just put points on the board at their youth levels, or just be told that they have tools. Because a lot of what happened under Tom Fitzgerald, the Devils would draft a guy where you would have to say, well, they got the tools, they got the looks, they just need to do it more often, work on the consistency, be able to do it more often. That's not the case with these guys. Command, Van Hanen, McKenzie to a degree, Gashalov to a degree, Sherbakov to a degree. You know, they already showed that they can do the work and help an offense go forward. And I really do think with the way the NHL is now and where it's going to be in 5 years, how you move the puck and how you go from defense to offense and back from offense to defense is going to matter a lot. And it can make the difference between being a good team and a great team. So getting a bunch of prospects that seemingly already know how to do that at their current levels may help that when they get to those next levels. Again, I really think Command was the best center after Lawrence. He's clearly in the long-term plans because Meta's already talking him up. Like, you don't get a comparison to Sam Bennett and Anton Lundell a month after you pick him just because you picked him. I think they're really, really high up on this guy. I respect the swings on talent. I like the boom and bust upsides of Gashalov and McKenzie. Do I think both of them will be future New Jersey Devils? Right now, probably not. They both have a lot to overcome and a lot to work on, but there's a world where that could possibly happen. Or at worst, they become very good Utica Comets. I'm not so sure about the Ruskovich and the Wilfley picks. Wilfley, again, I really do not understand taking a chance on a guy with just 15 points in 66 games, because that seems to suggest he's got a lot more work to do. As I mentioned earlier, points are not just how you do as a player. It's also, is the stuff you're doing on the ice yielding success for your teammates? Not really the case. And Ruskovich, look, if he's a goalie, if he's got the tools and you can work with him, great. If you can focus on the mechanics, great. But based on what I'm seeing and what little I've heard, I don't fully get the appeal. But again, he's a long-term prospect. So overall, looks okay. We'll see how it goes. If I were to take a chance, a lot of this is going to hinge on the successes of Command, Van Hanen, and Sherbakov. And if those three can hit, that's great. And those three hitting would be a lot better than what the Devils did 5 years ago. Great transition, I know. So let's look back now to what happened 5 years ago to get a sense of what to look for in a draft class 5 years after it happened, after the initial development has been done, after you know whether or not they got that first contract or not, whether or not they even got signed at all. You can get a sense of what really to expect and use that to temper what happened just a month ago this year. So the 2021 NHL draft was difficult. COVID-19 was definitely having a big impact. There was no OHL. There was no ECAC. A lot of leagues that did have hockey had reduced seasons. And if you were a prospect, you had to basically scramble to find a spot to play. Keep that in mind 2 slides from now, or maybe 5 slides. The World Under 18 Championships was huge as a result. They did run the regular World Under 18 Championships. NHL scouts flocked to that, as they typically do, but because, again, no OHL hockey, reduced seasons in the Q and the W, college was impacted, Europe was impacted. So getting the players in the championships, if you did well at that tournament, you definitely got a better draft selection than maybe you would have otherwise in a regular draft year. And because of the NHL draft, because of COVID, the draft itself was held a little later than usual. It was held in July, and it was held remotely for teams at NHL Studios in beloved Secaucus, New Jersey. Great place. Great area. This was the second season of Tom Fitzgerald. He was hired in 2020, so this is his first full draft year, so to speak, after having a full season or quasi-season under his belt. Again, COVID impacted the NHL. Devils had 4th overall. They had 29th overall thanks to the trades of Kyle Palmieri and Travis Zajac. They had 68th, 100th. They got 129th for trading Wayne Simmons to Buffalo. And they swapped a 7th rounder in 2020 to get a 203rd overall after having 164th in the 6th round. So the Devils had a slew of, a regular size draft class. They used all these picks. Their first one, you know him quite well. It's Luke Hughes, the brother of Jack, the brother of Quinn, left-handed defenseman out of the National Team Developmental Program. He's turning 23 this year. He made his debut in the NHL after 2 seasons at Michigan. He played 3 games in the NHL at the tail end of that wonderful 2022-23 season, and he made a couple appearances in the playoffs. So that entry-level contract, that first year was used up right away. Right now, he's on his second contract, huge contract, $9 million cap hit. He's signed through 2031-32, so he is set in New Jersey for another 6 seasons. Out of the draft class, he's actually 10th in scoring in the entire draft class. So forwards and defensemen, he's sitting at 128 points. That puts him 10th. And he's second in defensemen. Only Owen Power has more points, and Owen Power not only has played more games than Luke Hughes, he also went first overall. So the point is that Luke Hughes has stacked up fairly well on the surface with his peers in the draft class. Luke Hughes was seen as one of the best defensemen in that year, and so far he is one of the best defensemen of that draft class, purely in points and in the fact of how well he's used, and that contract helps justify that somebody in the Devils organization felt he was important. So let's ask and answer the question, is Luke Hughes good? You're 4th overall. You've got the big contract. Are you actually good at what you do? Well, let's take a look. So I look at a couple things for Luke Hughes here. 5-on-5 hockey, last 3 seasons. He's played 3 full seasons in the NHL. Let's see how it goes. In that first full season, his quote-unquote true rookie season in 23-24, he averaged close to 17 minutes a night. When he was on the ice, the Devils were quite good at defense in terms of allowing opportunities and allowing shots. And just to quickly run through what these types of numbers mean. So, Corsi is shooting attempts. CA 60 means this is the rate of attempts the Devils are allowing when Luke Hughes is on the ice. SA is for shots. XG is expected goals. HDCA is high danger chances, meaning opportunities from high danger areas. Typically that's going to be in front of the net and in the slot. GF percentage is goals for percentage, and PDO is a combination of shooting percentage and save percentage. So it's kind of like a luck stat. Generally, you want the percentages to be above 50, and you want the against rates to be as low as possible. And then to help that, I've got these ranks next to it. So in the last 3 seasons, 138 defensemen have played over 2,000 minutes of 5-on-5. Out of all 138, Luke Hughes has the 29th best against rate 3 seasons ago. And the Devils had the best Corsi percentage, or the 18th best Corsi percentage. So that's what these mean. So if you're in the top 30 or so, or even the top 50 or so among 138, it means you're well better than the median. You're better than the average. You're better than most of the defensemen who've played the amount of minutes that Luke Hughes has been playing. And for some of these rate stats, the Devils and Luke Hughes look really good. 3 seasons ago, the Devils had a great expected goals rate with him on the ice. The only thing that wasn't so hot was that high danger rate chance. That ranked on the lower end, both in terms of percentage and the against rate stat itself. The goals against rate was mid, and the goals for percentage was quite low, and the reason for that is really tied to the PDO here. For whatever reason, in each of the 3 seasons that Luke Hughes has played for the New Jersey Devils, the team's shooting percentage was in the 7% range, which is really, really low, meaning even if the Devils are doing a great job keeping the other team from attacking, and Luke Hughes is helping push the play forward as indicated by the positive Corsi and shots for percentages, guess what? The pucks aren't going in the net, so as a result, it looks like the Devils are being outscored because they were being outscored, and it's not because Luke Hughes is some sort of diabolical mastermind against helping his team win. It's because the pucks were not going in for the Devils, and therefore it's looking worse than it actually is. 2 seasons ago, Luke Hughes started to playing 18 minutes a night, so he got a big bump in minutes. Again, similar story. Devils were great at, relatively great with respect to shot attempts and shots themselves. The expected goal rates was, again, middle among the group of 138 in terms of defensemen. And the high danger rates, while better, definitely a little bit better than they were from the previous season. Still not great relative to his team. And again, the Devils got outscored with Luke Hughes on the ice because, again, the team shot something like 7.3% with him on the ice. So it's a classic case of Luke Hughes is legitimately doing good things on the ice. The Devils are benefiting from those good things, except when it comes to goals, which is very, very important. And last season, Luke Hughes, among the 146 defensemen that played 2,000 minutes or more at 5-on-5 last season, in 5-on-5 hockey, he was 13th in the league in terms of ice time per game. He played a lot more. And the attempts rate and the shot rate are on the positive side. They're above median in terms of against rate and percentage, but the expected goals, the high danger chances were definitely on the lower end, and that was reflective of how he played and how the Devils played with him and his teammates around him. The Devils bled a lot of opportunities. The defensive coverage wasn't always the best, and the shots that they were trying to generate weren't the most dangerous, as you would see by the expected goals, but what they were allowing was more dangerous, which is not good. Once again, Devils were outscored with him on the ice, and once again, rotten luck. Shooting percentage was super low again with Luke Hughes on the ice. So the overall picture of all these different numbers is that when Luke Hughes was on the ice, the Devils were pushing the play forward, which is what you want him to do. You want your defensemen to help create the attack. If they're getting stuck in their own end, it doesn't matter if they're crushing guys and making people cheer and blocking shots. You're supposed to get the puck out of your own end and going towards the opposition's ends. That's good defense. I understand sometimes you got to block shots and you got to crush dudes, but if you're doing it all the time, that belies how well your defense is actually working. But the Devils were doing well overall, but again, it wasn't resulting in shots. And of course, what they were allowing was more dangerous than what they were generating. So you definitely get that perception of, is Luke Hughes legitimately good? Because you're wondering, hey, where's the results? Where's the goals? How come you're bleeding these big opportunities when overall Luke Hughes and the team are doing quite a few good things in general. And that's been consistent over the last 3 seasons. Now, continuing on, let's look at the power play, because Luke Hughes has also played a lot on the power play. So 3 seasons ago, he played a lot on the power play thanks to a Dougie Hamilton injury, and the Devils did quite well. There were 56 defensemen that played 100 minutes on the power play 3 seasons ago, and you can see he's nearly top 20 in all of them, in all the different rate stats with Luke Hughes on the ice, which is great. It speaks well of how effective he was. The only thing that wasn't so great was his shooting rate. The SOG per 60 is Luke Hughes' own shooting rate, which makes sense. Luke Hughes wasn't that much of a shooter 3 seasons ago. 2 seasons ago, Dougie Hamilton played more often, and Dougie Hamilton legitimately was one of the best defensemen on the power play. Like, all his rate stats with Dougie Hamilton on the ice were almost like 1 or number 2 in the league. Like, he legitimately was one of the best defensemen on the power play throughout all of 24-25. Luke Hughes didn't do so badly as a second defenseman on that first pairing or on the secondary unit. You see a couple top 10 rate stats with him on the ice for scoring chances and high danger chances during man advantage situations. Again, above the median, except maybe in expected goals and shot rate with those 50 out of 55 defensemen. But even with more limited minutes, Luke Hughes was contributing to the power play. And then last season, he got a bump in minutes. Dougie Hamilton and him split time more evenly. But again, with Luke Hughes on the ice, the Devils were generating lots of attempts, lots of shots, more high danger chances, more scoring chances, the best in the league, in fact, on the power play. The Devils just weren't finishing a lot of them. The on-ice shooting percentage was only 11.5% on the power play. So all that good work just led to a lot of great plays not being finished, a lot of frustration from the fans like myself and like yourself. And so it does belie his it begs the question, was he truly good on the power play? But statistically, yes, he was. The Devils' power play was doing everything but scoring. And had they had better puck luck, better shooting percentages, the Devils would have scored more power play goals and maybe would have won some more games. And Luke Hughes has been increasing his own shooting rate. He's been shooting the puck more on the power play. So he's been more than just a distributor from the back. He's not just passing the puck to number 86 and 63. He's doing good things. So as a power play performer, Luke Hughes has been fantastic. And overall, is Luke Hughes good? Yes, he is. But I don't think he's quite $9 million a season good. Again, the power play performances, you can't deny him. Outside of the lack of results for the team as a whole, the guy's been generating offense. He's doing what he can do, and the Devils' power play is benefiting with number 43 running things from the back. At 5-on-5 hockey, there's strong generation of attempts and shots, and those are undeniably good things. You want to keep the other team from shooting. The problem is that what the other team is shooting and generating has been more dangerous than what the Devils have been doing. And so there are legitimate questions about his own defensive coverage and how the Devils as a whole play defense when he's on the ice. It could be tied into a couple too many risks being taken at times, and therefore giving up those big opportunities for high XG and obviously GA chances. Giving up those high danger areas suggests that either he or his partner or his own forwards that he's working with, they have to do a better job in front of the net and protect that area a little bit better. What I've noticed from last season in particular, Luke Hughes played really, really, really well, and the Devils really, really, really benefited when Luke Hughes was paired with Brett Pesce or Jonathan Kovacevic. And yes, I was surprised to see Kovacevic's name on the higher end of stats there as teammates. Because Kovacevic was not that good last season. But Luke Hughes made it work. But you've put Luke Hughes next to Brendan Dillon, Simon Nemec, or Dougie Hamilton, and it was not good. It was especially not good with Nemec, and there were too many games last season where Nemec and Luke Hughes were paired together as an offensive duo, trying to overload the offense. But a lot of times it looked like it's like walking with two left shoes on. It didn't look right, and it didn't always fit right. So there are some successes even from last season in terms of how the Devils performed and what pairings seemed to work better than others. And that also contributed to some of the not so good as well as some of the good stats Luke Hughes has been putting up over the last 3 seasons. It's clear that Luke Hughes is not a guy that you can just pair with anybody and it'll make it work. He needs the right skill set to be paired with. And that seems to be somebody who can move decently and have a more defensive mindset like Brett Pesce or even a Kovacevic, which is obviously after Kovacevic's injury. But it can't just be any defensive-minded defenseman because, again, you pair him with Dillon, and it just did not work. The other thing that has made Luke Hughes' goodness not look so good, the puck luck. The Devils have been terrible with him on the ice in terms of finishing plays. That's not necessarily something Luke Hughes is doing. It's not like Luke Hughes is out there saying, please miss the net. Please fire it into the goalie's logo. Please, just wing it and don't aim for the back of the net. No, he's making plays. Shots are being taken. Attempts are being made. But again, if the team is shooting 7.5 or lower with him on the ice, it's always going to look worse than it actually is. So could he be worth $9 million? Yeah, he could. And it could be as early as next season, provided he gets the right pairing, provided he gets paired with Pesce, provided the coaching staff works well with him, and provided he continues to mitigate his own risks while understanding when to take the risks. Very talented player, very skilled. He's got the moves. He's got the speed that this blue line actually now desperately needs because it's just him, Hamilton for offense. He's quite good. And he's more than lived up to his selection at 4th overall, which was ultimately the major point I wanted to make here. Fantastic pick at 4th overall. Wish I could say the same for Chase Stillman at 29. Oh, this was a pick that I didn't like in 2021, and I have been unfortunately proven very right about it. So he was selected at 29th overall at the tail end of that first round. Right-handed winger. He is the son of Corey Stillman, longtime NHL player. Because he was an OHLer, he did not have an OHL season to play in. Stillman struggled to get an opportunity anywhere to play, and he ended up getting a bizarre 8-game loan to the under-20 team of Esbjerg in Denmark. It was so obscure that I believe it was Ryan Novozinski, asked Tom Fitzgerald after the Stillman pick, so what did you see in those 8 games in Denmark? Tom Fitzgerald just gave him a look of like, what are you talking about? And to be fair, I don't blame him, because who's monitoring the under-20s in Denmark in the post-COVID year? What got him selected is the fact that he's Corey Stillman's son, and he played bottom 6 for Canada at the World Under-18s, and he did well at those under-18 tournament. So you like his size. You think he's got jam. He's got the bloodlines. He performed well at the one international tournament everyone was paying attention to. So you select him at 29th overall. I didn't think it was the right pick then. I don't think there were a lot of other prospects I would have preferred. Olin Zellweger was one. Nikita Gribrikov, who obviously hasn't panned out just yet, but he's at least played in NHL games, which is something more than Chase Stillman has yet to do. Stillman followed up his draft year by going back to the OHL. He played at Sudbury. Then he went to Peterborough for a season and a half. He was traded mid-season in 21-22. He got his ELC in 23-24, went right to Utica, and posted up a whopping 17 goals and 16 assists in 100 games. He did not finish his second season in Utica because on March 7th, 2025, he was traded with Max Graham and a third rounder for next year for Cody Glass and John Gruden. Stillman has yet to play in the NHL. Pittsburgh, I don't believe, re-signed him, so he is elsewhere. Look, the fact that he was traded for Glass does show that he had some value. And Glass has been a valuable contributor to a point from last season's teams, and he may be a valuable contributor to this season's team, depending on what Sonny does between now and October 1st. That being said, this pick was a bust. This pick didn't have the skill set. It wasn't what the Devils needed in their system. And unfortunately, I hate to say it, but he hasn't even played in the NHL yet. He hasn't even got a cup of coffee in the NHL. It didn't work out. Not a good pick. The Devils went on and they picked in the third round Samu Salminen, a left-handed center, left winger out of Jokerit, specifically Jokerit's under-20 team. So he did well with the under-20s, and he was the captain of Finland at the World Under-18 tournament, where he had an awesome tournament. 7 goals in 7 games, 2 assists on top of that. Very productive with the under-20s in Jokerit in a shortened season. And he stayed in the under-20s because he wanted to maintain college eligibility, which he got. He went to UConn after he was drafted, or the season after he was drafted, I should say, his D+2 season. Things didn't go so well. It was a bit of a struggle for him in college, which does happen. Jumping from junior hockey in Finland right to college hockey with young men, I should say. Not the easiest jump in the world. Only 17 points in 27 games as a freshman. Maintained that production as a sophomore. Things weren't working out well for him at UConn, so he sought a transfer, and he got that transfer to the mighty University of Denver. Congratulations to Denver. They won a national championship last season, and Salminen was a part of that as a senior. That being said, the New Jersey Devils organization didn't think very much of his growth or his skill set or where he could be in the future. So after that national championship, he had an opportunity to be signed, and the Devils just did not sign him. He is currently a free agent. If you go to Elite Prospects, look at his profile, he is available. The Devils didn't sign him, and I hate to say, I'm sure he's a nice guy, and it's clear he had a successful college career in the sense that he did contribute to a national championship winning team, and he might still have a future in minor pro hockey here. He might have a future going back to Finland or going to another country in Europe. You know, he's got a pro career ahead of him, but as a Devils draft pick, it didn't work out. This did not go well, and not getting signed is indicative of that. Jacob Malik is your 4th round pick. He was your goalie pick in 2021, and he was drafted out of VHK Vestín in the Czech Republic, left-handed goalie. He signed for Ilves, or Ilves. I don't know how to pronounce that entirely, but that's in Liga. That's in Finnish hockey. Went right to the men's league in Finnish hockey after his post-draft year and played pretty well. 20, decent save percentages over what would be, 1A, number 2 games played at that level. He signed his entry-level contract, and it had a European out clause, so he went back to Ilves for another season, got more games, had another good year at 91 save percentage. He got to make his Utica debut last season. Was a learning curve for him. Utica wasn't very good last year. He got 31 games, barely missed a 90% save percentage, which is pretty impressive in the sense that Utica was not a good team last season. So he putting up nearly decent numbers is a mark of strength in that regard. And more importantly than that, he got re-signed. Unlike Salminen and some other guys in this draft class, he got a second contract after his entry-level contract. So he's got another 2-year contract, 2-way contract, so he does have a bit of incentive to try to play well. He's currently 4th on the goalie depth chart. So right now, I don't know how I did that. How do I do that? Sorry. How do I fix that? That I've just fixed. So moving onward, he's 4th on the goalie depth chart. So it basically runs Jake Allen, Nico Dawson, David Rittich, Malik. So if any of those 3 guys get hurt, Malik has an opportunity to come up and play. And if it turns out any of those 3 goalies don't do well or they get moved, Malik still has an opportunity to compete for some actual NHL minutes. So don't be shocked if he gets an NHL debut within that 2-year contract he currently has. But for now, he's set to be the man in Utica, and that's a good spot for him. Good spot for a 4th-round draft pick. So far, this pick is okay. It's not impressive. It's not a success, but it's not bad, and it has the possibility of being a success. Also, 5th-round draft pick, Topias Vilen, left-handed defenseman drafted from Leti Pelicans. They just go by Pelicans traditionally. Not a big scorer at the youth level, but he did play for Pelicans. He did play for the World Under-18s, which once again was a major factor for a lot of the draft picks in 2021. Warren A, so he knew Samu Salminen quite well. He was part of the leadership team on that Finnish team. Played 7 games, put up 4 assists. He got an ELC fairly early. He got it in 2022. Got a loan back to Lahti for more games in the Finnish Liga. Played 41 games there. Played 18 playoff games. Appeared for the World Junior Championships. And he actually made his Utica debut at the tail end of that 2022-23 season, appearing in 1 game for Utica's playoff. Since then, he's been a mainstay on that Comet blue line. 54 games and 29 points in that first full season in 23-24. Follow that up with another 58 games and 24 points. Last season was his quote, I don't want to say breakout, but he got a taste of the NHL. He made his NHL debut, played 2 games with minimal minutes, while also getting 61 games at Utica. So at the minimum, he made it in minor pro hockey in America. He can say he's been in the show. For most 5th-round draft picks, that's way better than most. He's currently an RFA, so the Devils haven't made a decision yet on whether or not they're going to re-sign him. I want to say they might, but with the inclusion of Declan Chisholm, the inclusion of Vladislav Kolchonok, and other defensemen possibly coming in from the pipeline, it remains to be seen if Vilen's going to be a victim of the numbers game. He's definitely not going to be number 7 on the depth chart on the blue line. He may not even be number 8. That being said, teams can and do go through 9, 10, 11 defensemen in an NHL campaign. So if the Devils opt to keep Vilen, don't be super shocked if he gets a cup of coffee again with New Jersey next season, which again, more successful than most other picks at this range of the draft. So we're going to move on now to Victor Hurtig, the 164th overall pick, a right-handed defenseman drafted out of Vesteras IK, or specifically their under-20 team, because similar to Salminen, he wanted to go to college, he had a commitment, so he stayed in under-20 hockey, which was a bit of an issue because he did have a couple games that was considered to be pro, so there was some eligibility questions. He joined Michigan. He did end up being eligible after all, and he went to Michigan State in 22-23. He missed most of 23-24, I believe with an injury. I don't remember if the eligibility concerns came up then, but his time as a Spartan didn't go super well. He decided to move on to Michigan Tech in 24-25. And last season, it looked like he wanted to go back, but he ended up going back to Karlskrona in Hockey Etan, which is Sweden's 3rd tier of hockey. I'm not sure if that's a professional league or not, if he was maintaining his eligibility, but with NIL now being a thing, maybe that didn't matter anymore. But more interestingly than that, and this was confirmed, I think, by Christy Flannery at the Hockey News, he played 7 games for Karlskrona and then said, I'm done. I'm leaving hockey. I gotta leave hockey for now. It remains to be seen if he's gonna come back to playing hockey, and if he does, maybe at some type of level, maybe amateur level only. Maybe he tries again to play pro in Sweden. But Hurtig, he left hockey. He didn't get signed out of college. He didn't get, college. I don't think went particularly great for him. I don't know if it went particularly bad, but from the perspective of the New Jersey Devils, he was a guy they took a chance on, and it didn't work out. It is what it is. I hope he's doing well now that he's left hockey. According to Elite Prospects, it doesn't appear that he's coming back anytime soon. The last pick of the draft class, I need to take a deep breath here so I don't get super mad. It's Zakhar Bardakov, a left-handed center/winger drafted out of Vityaz Podolsk. He actually had KHL games under his belt. I believe he was an overage draft pick, as he played for Russia in the World Junior Championships, one of their last World Junior Championships appearances since the IIHF ban on Russia. When he was drafted, the word on him was that he was going to be a menace. He was big, and he was mean, and he was tough, and he was going to hurt some people. Steve Kurianos, the draft analysis, called him a menace. And you're thinking, okay, this is one interesting player to pick with your 7th round draft pick. Sure, why not? Let's see what happens. What turned out was that Zakhar Bardakov stopped being a menace and started learning to play ice hockey, and doing ice hockey well. He transferred to SKA St. Petersburg, one of the biggest teams of the KHL, after his draft year. And from season to season, he started getting more minutes, more points. And he ended up having a breakout season in 24-25 with 35 points in 53 games. The KHL is not a high-scoring league, so that's actually a really good output for a young man. And he did so well, he got an NHL contract with the Colorado Avalanche. And he actually played there last season. He was their 4th-line center/winger. He played in 60 games, got a goal, 10 points. It turns out that Colorado and maybe Bardakov didn't see eye to eye about his potential future in the organization at that role. So rather than saying, let's compete and grind it out and hope for the best in training camp, he signed back with SKA St. Petersburg, and he's going to play there next season. For 7th round draft picks, that's a success. He played in the NHL. He played a season. He now has a legitimate pro career, and he's young enough that if he wants to go back to the NHL one day, there's an opportunity for that. Going back to SKA St. Petersburg will not be a detriment to that, given his age and given that, he can play a 4th-line center role in the NHL. What makes me mad is that the New Jersey Devils never benefited from any of this. The Devils drafted the guy. The pick went, I can say the pick went well because the player did well, but the Devils never benefited because they traded Bardakov for one of the worst players in modern New Jersey Devils history in Curtis McDermott. On March 1st, 2024, the Devils traded the rights to Bardakov to McDermott. So right on the doorstep of that big breakout season with SKA St. Petersburg, where otherwise Bardakov was doing well. He was a regular. He was playing regularly on a big team in Russia. The Devils said, no, we need to trade him for a guy who's just a pair of fists on skates. And a guy who's not even very good at those fists, because he certainly didn't protect anybody. He didn't stop Matt Rempe from concussing Jonas Siegenthaler. He didn't stop Radko Gudas hurting anybody. But boy, if you need a guy to fight somebody 2 weeks after you need him to, hey, McDermott was your guy. McDermott was awful. He was absolutely terrible. Yes, he played NHL hockey. He got an NHL contract. And yeah, he was even traded miraculously to a point to Ottawa for Zach McEwen, who actually could play a little ice hockey. But the reality is that Bardakov would have been perfect for what the Devils needed in that position. A guy who could actually play a little bit. And if you needed that quote-unquote tough element, the guy was certainly big enough and had that mindset to do it. So good pick, terrible management. McDermott was awful. So let's look back at 2021. Unfortunately, the successes out of this draft that are unqualified successes are Luke Hughes and Bardakov. Because again, relative to that 7th round selection at 203rd overall, one season of NHL hockey is a massive success at that pick. Malik and Valen could technically make this draft class a little bit better. If Malik gets an opportunity and runs with it as a goalie, this will make the draft class look a little bit better. Valen, you could argue the fact that he got an NHL cup of coffee at all for where he was drafted, it makes him a success. I put him more in the meh category. Okay for Utica, maybe helps Utica be a little bit better. That's fine, but you're not picking these guys to help your AHL team. You're helping them with the hopes of helping your NHL team. And unfortunately, there were some not successes out of this group. Stillman was a bust. Salminen wasn't signed out of college. Bust. Hertig left hockey entirely. And that 29th overall pick for Chase Stillman really stings because there were a lot of good guys picked right after him. Like Josh Doan was an early second-round pick. Olin Zellweger was a guy I wrote that you could have been taking. Nikita Gruberkov maybe wasn't that successful, but he's played in NHL games, which is more I can say for Stillman. Later in that second round, you had Atu Ratu, and the big one, Carolina Hurricane legend Logan Stankoven, who's now on an 8-year contract. I mean, look, if an out-of-shape hockey blogger like myself can name guys 5 years ago that, hey, you could have picked this guy instead of Stillman, and then it turns out that's right. Look, I'm wrong about a lot of stuff, and I wish I was wrong about Stillman, but that 29th overall pick whiffing really, really hurt. And it hurts later down the line because now that's a player that the Devils needed to look for in future drafts, and it remains to be seen whether or not they really fulfilled it since then, or they fulfilled it through some other means, like a trade, a free agency signing, something else. In retrospect, the World Under-18 Championships really overrated a lot of picks. Stillman was one of them, and he was not the only one. If you played well at that tournament, you got selected, and I get it. COVID really undercut a lot of seasons and a lot of leagues and a lot of really important draft years for these players. So that championship kind of became a place where if you did well there, you got picked, and maybe you got picked higher than maybe you should have, and maybe you got a different direction about how you should have been developed. This draft class, however, was also notable was that this was a very European draft. Again, let's go back through it briefly again. After Hughes, an American, and Stillman, a Canadian, you had Salminen, Malik, Valen, Hertig, Bardakov. That's 5 European-based players. It would be the second most that was selected under Castron and Mark Dennehy, and tied with this year's draft class with 5 selections out of Europe. Future draft classes in 2022, 2023, 24, and even in 25 had multiple European-based players selected. Again, no big deal with that, but it just shows that those European scouts were leaned on for their work and how they scouted and how they looked and how they evaluated those players definitely meant quite a bit because they ended up being selected further down the line. So I know I talked quite a bit. Just to conclude things, the 2021 draft class, you could be a little cynical and say it's just Luke Hughes and a bunch of dudes, but it wouldn't be a completely inaccurate way of describing it. Again, Bardakov, I would argue, was a successful pick for where he was. Malik and Valen are not totally lost causes, and they could boost the level of that draft class, but it's basically Luke Hughes and a bunch of dudes as of now, and that's how it really benefits the New Jersey Devils, which is ultimately what you're looking for with that. Again, it's a stretch to say Stillman worked out because it helped you get Cody Glass years later, because Stillman was really just thrown in there, and Glass was somebody that Pittsburgh was clearly trying to get rid of to begin with. So, nevertheless, that's the draft class of 2021. Hopefully the 26 draft class is more fruitful, yields better players. Hopefully that emphasis on transitional play and underlying numbers that Meta and his staff are going to be focusing more on, hopefully yields better prospects for Utica and better prospects for the New Jersey Devils. To close things out, I want to highlight some sources and recommended reads. So once again, Natural Stat Trick. I went to them for a lot for the Luke Hughes numbers. Go to Natural Stat Trick, one of the best stat sites that's publicly and freely available online. HockeyDB, excellent resource for looking at draft classes, especially at snapshots to see how many of these guys even played in the NHL. Elite Prospects, pretty much pound for pound, one of the best hockey websites online. Absolutely critical if you want to learn where somebody is, where they're playing, whether they're at the youth level or at the pro level. Anthony Corona, he did the Meta interview. If you haven't seen it yet, go watch it. Fantastic interview, very insightful. And credit to Meta that he's out there talking to people already. He's not like Tom Fitzgerald just doing a simple press conference and calling it a summer. He's sitting in front of people, in front of what appears to be a fireplace, talking to Anthony Corona. Good to see, and good on Corona for asking some good questions as well. For the prospects, again, I read a whole lot of stuff ahead of this stream to get a sense of like who these prospects were and how things were. My favorite sites to go to for that include Dobber Prospects. That's the prospect side of Dobber Hockey, one of the best fantasy hockey resources. The Hockey News, they do a lot of good list work. Christy Flannery works there, but also Tony Ferrari and a number of other people do prospect profiles and rankings there. Smart Scouting, one of the best scouting sites available for free. Will Scouting, he does a lot of stuff on YouTube, scouting.ca. Tireless worker, reviews a lot of guys. He's currently going through reviews of the draft classes for all 32 teams. So go to his YouTube channel, Scouting, and you'll see them all. JP Gambitase of Devil's Advocate on Substack. He's going through a top 25, under 25, similar to what we used to do at All About the Jersey, and maybe still do at All About the Jersey. I don't run All About the Jersey anymore, so I can't tell you how they do business now. But Gambitese does a lot of hard work. He goes into a lot of detail. He clearly watches the tape. Strong opinions on prospects. Go read his stuff. And at EVN Ted, Evan Ted, I'm not sure. Legend of HF Boards. He just posted up all of his prospect reviews on X, the Everything app. Highly recommend you follow him for prospect information. Big Devils fans. He clearly has a good sense of where things are going as well for prospects. And of course, read all about the jersey. I'm always going to stand my former site, so credit to them. So with that being said, I know this was a longer stream than usual. Next time, I'm going to attempt to do my first interview, so that should be fun. And as the summer keeps going, I'm going to keep doing streams looking into other questions about the Devils, how Devils players have performed, not just preview stuff, but also review stuff from the previous season. So if you've got burning questions or things you want to see, or just questions you have in general, feel free to ask me. Leave them in the comments. Let me know on X, the Everything app. Send me an email, and I will do my best to cover it either on the stream or in response. So again, thank you to everybody. You indeed are the people who matter, the New Jersey Devils fans. This has been the Jersey Overtime. Have yourselves a good day.